All right, so here with my good friend. I don't know, can I call you a good friend? We only talked one time since 20 years ago.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, cool. Wait, how long has it been though? 99? So that's,
22 years.
oh my gosh, I cannot believe that. I still feel like a little kid. I still
Well,
feel very, I still feel like an immature little crazy kid. It's just, I'm really healthy now.
well, that's what happens when you love what you do, right?
That's right. Well, cool. So, Haley, can you introduce yourself? Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, my name's Hayley Zeidman. I am a mom of three little kids, going on 44 years old, had my last baby at 40. I'm a West Point grad. I'm a former Army officer. And I spent some time, 8 years in the Army, spent some time in corporate America before I just turned into a stay-at-home mom. Now I'm a homeschooling mom. And I'm a biohacker, big practitioner of ancestral health. And then I'm also a wellness coach.
Yeah, and you have a Facebook community, right?
I do. It's a Facebook community. It's called Wellness Warriors, also called Hayley's Wellness Warriors, if you just search for that. But it's a great community. We do challenges. Right now we're wrapping up a body composition challenge, just trying to get people in the gym, practicing some of the biohacking techniques in their daily life and just showing them how it's done. But yeah, it's a really fun community. And so I do run that. And then I also run a community for extended nursing mothers. But that's probably not for this crowd.
Well, it might be, but I think that's really cool because you're sharing your experience and your wisdom and your passion for how you feel with other people, trying to instill it in other people. I think that's really cool. The reason I wanted to get Hayley on here, I mean, she hasn't necessarily been through any of the SHT programs, but she's in this ancestral health realm just like we are. And, we were classmates back at West Point and kind of knew each other from a distance, really didn't interact with each other that much, but I think we had a distant admiration for each other, if I could put it that way. Right. And then just ended up connecting here recently. And it was just so cool to see that yet another person has naturally found their way to this ancestral health template after going through a lot of freaking pain to get there, So I was just hoping that we could talk about your experience and tease out maybe some learnings there, because I'm sure a lot of people are going to resonate with you, especially the females in our community. So do you mind if I just ask you some questions and try to tease out some interesting stuff?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So when we were talking the other day, you said that when you were a kid, you were like an overachiever. And part of that was because of maybe feeling like you were an outcast, misfit, semi-introverted or something along those lines. And that kind of led to a little bit to where you are. So can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. When I was a kid, I didn't feel like I fit in with the other kids. We were poor. We didn't have, I'd wear the Goodwill clothes, nothing matched. My hair wasn't cute, none of those things. And so I just didn't feel like and I was also an introvert, right? So you don't have those natural social skills. So I really, really had a hard time. And I found that the one way that I could, stand out and get respect was through academic achievement, and to some point athletic achievement as well. But that became kind of my thing. And so I just really developed this work ethic. So even though maybe I wasn't the smartest child in the class, naturally I would just work so hard on everything that, eventually that would shine through. And so
You get really good grades and right.
Yeah, of
You'd
course. And
outperform everybody.
that was the way that I would try to, get approval from other people, get acceptance from friends, from teachers. And because it was, I always felt inadequate. So I always had something to prove. And it served me well for a long time. I started winning contests. I started winning, writing contests and drawing contests in the younger grades. Up in high school, I would, I became a leader in sports, a leader in the band. I was doing everything, top of my class, ended up valedictorian, and that got me into West Point. And then, West Point, it's a whole different realm, where just suddenly, you're under so much stress, you're experiencing, extreme sleep deprivation. It's a huge blow to everybody's self-esteem. So if it's kind of fragile to begin with, it's just a huge hit.
Yeah.
And
Now,
so
do you
you
mind
talk
if
about,
can I ask you a question real quick back on that? Do you remember when you started feeling that insecurity that made you become an overachiever? Because when you say that, like, it reminds me of myself. I remember when I was a really young kid, I wore same thing, like mixed match clothes, holes in my shoes, like just I didn't even have a concept of fitting in and caring about that. And then I remember at some point there was a shift to where I actually cared and people made fun of me and I tried to fit in. And I feel like that was the beginning of a lot of bad decisions that I made throughout the rest of my life. So do you remember when that happened? Was there a time you didn't care and then you did care?
Ever since I was that good little kid struggling for recognition, even in kindergarten. Like,
Yeah.
I wanted the recognition. I was trying so hard and I couldn't get it. And then in first grade, that's when I was really trying to make friends. And so I think it even goes down back to first grade mostly. I mean, I vividly remember just my clothes, just really feeling ashamed of my clothes and just really trying to get somebody's approval. And that wasn't available either. It wasn't until I got to third grade when suddenly they started getting letter grades, and I got all A's, and I was like, oh, okay, this is awesome. I'm going to go with this. But I was trying so hard just for friends, but it was very lonely. Yeah. So as long as I can remember.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So then take us to your next kind of pivot point. I think I remember you saying something about when you were a freshman or sophomore, you had this realization you wanted to lose some weight and get healthier, something like that. Wasn't that the next thing that we talked about?
Yeah,
Can you
absolutely.
expand on that just a little bit?
So I got to West Point. It was super hard. So almost everybody's grades take a hit, right? Everybody's kind of struggling to figure it out. It's this whole new stressful situation where you're trying to manage people hazing you, people, the extreme physical requirements, the military requirements. You're trying to balance all that with your college course load. And
Yeah, you've got a really intense academic load, and then you've got sports and fitness and the, whatever you want to call it, the disciplinary part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a lot. And I put on the freshman 15. And I remember I was the valedictorian. I had
Wait,
all
what's the
A's
freshman
all my
15?
life. Go ahead. What's that?
What's the freshman 15?
You put on 15 pounds when you go. You start at, that's a women thing, right?
Remember Boodlers and Ben and Jerry's and all that?
I never did that stuff, but of
Oh
course
my
it
gosh.
was an icon. Hey,
Oh,
boodlers. That's like one of my favorite words in the world. Like, to say boodle.
yeah.
It's the best.
I wonder how they
Boodle
came
is
up with
like
that.
kind of a contraband. It's a word before West Point, but definitely. Yeah. Anyway, that was good times. But no,
Boodlers was just for everybody listening. Boodlers was this place that once you got out of being a plebe, right, you can go up there and you can get like treats. You can get like pasta and ice creams and all this stuff. So
like microwave like microwave noodles and
the most
pizza.
horrific foods on the planet, as far as we know now.
Yes, junk
Yeah.
food, absolute
Yeah.
junk food. I
Mountain
wasn't really.
Dews.
Go ahead.
Mountain Dews by the liter. I remember my classmates would, whatever. That's crazy.
We would call it slug dew. I remember.
Yes. Yep. All right, go ahead. Sorry. So,
That's okay.
15.
Well, it was just, it was the stress. It was the sleep deprivation. Everything got to me, and I wasn't getting the grades I wanted. So I rolled up into our summer training, and I just decided. I said, you know what? And I'm really good at setting long-term goals and just going for them. Or that's something that's always served me very well. So I just pictured myself, you know what? I want to be on top like I was before. And so what is that? What does that look like? That if you're a woman, if you're a man, you look super fit, you're buff. If you're a woman, you're skinny. So I had to get skinny, and I had to get, I had to start achieving again. I had to start getting good grades. And so I started running, and I started working out, over exercising. Probably 5 times a day I would exercise. You get up 5 a.m, you're exercising. You have a break from class, you're exercising. You're going to PT. You do 2 workouts in the evening.
The more the better is the way we were looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you weren't doing, that much, then you were a slug, right? Then you were a dirtbag. And so, and on top of that, I was studying constantly. So I was, dealing with like this, extreme academic load plus this insane workout schedule. I wasn't eating the food in the mess hall, which probably would have been a better choice. I was like living off boxes of cereal because I thought that was healthy, because I thought high fat was bad. I thought butter was bad. I thought meat was bad. And so,
yeah, I remember we used to get the low-fat, non-fat cottage cheese packs, and we get as many of the non-fat milk cartons as we could, and take them to our room, and
oh my gosh, I would take boxes of cereal and just like snack on them constantly while I was studying. I mean, no wonder why it was so hard to keep the weight off, but I did, because I was, it was that much of a deficit that I was creating. I mean, I would run between 6 and 13 miles a day.
Yeah.
That on top of all the other nonsense that I was doing. So, so I went to extremes. I spent every waking moment, even on the weekends studying, and it served me well. I ended up back on top by the end of my sophomore year. I got, at West Point, they give you little badges.
Oh yeah, you were part of the honor or the what was it?
They call them star wreaths, and that means that you have straight A's academically, and then you at least have a 3.0 physically and militarily and academically. So it was only a few cadets could get this, and so
and that was honor grad too, right?
Yeah, I was an honor grad. I didn't quite decide I was going to do that till the end of my sophomore year, but that was another feat where you're it's top I believe it's top 5% of your class. Mm-hmm. But I was working towards that the whole time. So that really kept me, going, just that nonstop determination that you can pull off when you're a young person, right?
Yeah. But and I think if we could just for one moment, just acknowledge, what you've said. This is what a lot of people experience, is that, I'll work with people and they'll come in here and they'll be like, well, when I was younger, I did this and it worked for me. And I think what we're saying here is that what you did when you were younger, you were lean and fit in spite of what you were doing. It wasn't because of what you were doing. You were overcoming what you were doing. You could have been doing the completely wrong thing. I was, at the same time with you up there, 6-pack abs. I looked really fit, and I was doing the same thing, low fat and just eating as much as I could, as often as I could. So it's just that when we're younger, I feel like we have this resiliency that at some point kind of gives out, and then all that metabolic damage that we did starts to compile and manifest as symptoms a little bit later. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, sleep deprivation, we know it's bad for everyone.
Yeah.
But, I was surviving on 4 or 5 hours a night. And, that's a recipe for the expression of obesity genes, right? Yeah. So
we were just talking about this. We were talking about this the other day about, cause we're in, this April is going to be our month of sleep. So we have several seminars on sleep, and I used to pull all-nighters all the time up there and just drink coffee in the middle of the night, trying to study and get good grades and stuff. It's crazy.
Me too. I had my little ritual when I had an exam, get my liter of Diet Coke. How terrible is that? And then I just chew bubble gum and study all night, Yeah. So it is. We have this leniency, but it catches up to you. And these days I feel like it's catching up to kids even sooner. You can see it in high school. I mean, you can even see it in young children. You go to a preschool, you used to never see an obese child at the preschool. Now you can see 2 or 3 of them, 4 or 5. So
yeah, absolutely. Parents are passing on their deficiencies and predispositions, and then kids are starting even further behind the freaking curve, and they start to see these problems earlier.
I do coach quite a few people in their early 20s that have significant problems. And so that's something that's new, I want to say, for the past, probably since Monsanto really got approved. So
next
anyway,
thing, I think, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
No, you go. You're doing the questions.
Well, no, I think next thing we talked about was then, so that, that was kind of setting you up for being this super achiever and, overcoming the odds. And then didn't you get deployed after you got out of, after you graduated?
Yeah. So I graduated. I was stationed in Germany, got deployed. And that's really a pivot point. Like you like to point out the pivot points. And it wasn't just the deployment, but when you're on deployment, you're exposed to a lot of things, a lot of formaldehyde levels that are probably too high, just a lot of stress, a lot of sleep deprivation. So I did my deployment. It was fine. And then when I got back, though, I was traveling around Europe with my friends. And I remember at one point I was just, observing this breathtaking scene, just overlooking a river, castles in the background, just phenomenal view. And I was just like, so what? And I realized at that moment that I couldn't feel joy anymore. Like, I was just like, I couldn't care less about this. And this is something, and this is, I'm an art history buff. Like, that was one of my loves. I even loved it so much I took it as an elective at West Point. I mean, that's love right there.
So you couldn't feel joy, but could you acknowledge that you couldn't feel joy? Like, you were aware that you weren't feeling joy?
Yeah, that's the moment that I realized it. And so I went to the doctor and I'm like, there is something wrong with me. This is not right. And she just said, oh, okay, well, you just have a chemical imbalance. We're just going to correct it with this medication. It'll be fine. It'll just be a temporary thing to help you get by. Right. So I was like, oh, sure. That sounds great. I just want a little pill that I can take to fix me. And then I can keep on performing. I can keep on achieving. I can keep on doing, everything that I want to do. Mm-hmm. And so I did. So I took the medication, worked great for several years. And, but by the way, during this point, I don't think I've mentioned this before. Because of all my over exercising at West Point and, I was doing the military competition. By this time, I also had some pretty severe chronic pain. And I developed a condition in my hand where my hand would go numb. So, and I didn't know what that was all about. And so, things that I can look back on and say, this is probably due to chronic inflammation, but I didn't know that back then. I was just afraid. And so
I was going to say that had to be scary.
It was very scary because if I would just lift my hand to brush my hair, my arm would just go to sleep. I'd lose the circulation. It was frightening. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. And so I would have to start going to doctor appointments. That's not a good look when you're in the military. So that was then further eroding the fragile, sense of self-worth, because everything was based around me being this achiever and somebody who could just outperform everyone. If you're away at the doctor, you're not achieving, you're not serving the unit. Yeah. So I started trying to figure out this chronic pain situation, taking the antidepressants, trying to deal with the pain. And then I went back to the stateside where I really decided, I'm like, okay, I'm going to figure out what's going on with my hands. It turns out I had a condition called thoracic outlet syndrome. So I was eventually, after probably 2 years of searching, I was able to find the answer to that by eventually seeing a hand specialist. And then I got 4 surgeries to correct it. But anyway, but the thing is, after the surgeries were complete, and then I also had 2 useless surgeries because the pain that I didn't really even need to try to fix this pain. So after all that was complete, I was still in pain. I still had chronic pain. And so at this point, I'd already served 8 years. I said, okay, well, I need to get out of the Army because I can't deploy anymore. I have all these problems. Can't really do my job because I'm going to physical therapy and it's just deteriorating and I don't want to make it worse.
And when you say problems, we're talking about the combination of being depressed, not being able to experience joy, and then some pain, right?
Well, the depression. So the depression was definitely a problem. That wasn't something I was willing to admit to anybody. So that was just something that I was hiding. I was so much shame with the depression. Go ahead.
You were dealing with it personally.
Yeah. And so what I would do to handle that was I would go to work. I would work my butt off at work. I would still go do my therapy, but I'd work late to try to compensate that. And that's all I could do. So I would just come home and just go to bed to try to handle that. But then I had insomnia from my depression medication. So then I'd toss and turn all night, wake up exhausted, drink a bunch of caffeine, and then try to do it all over again. And so it was, it was a very unhealthy existence. I didn't know any other way. I just thought, okay, I need more pills to fix this because I have a chemical imbalance. So it's that tape that just kept running in my head. And, it would get a little bit better with the physical therapy, But, overall, I just had this excruciating pain. So.
And then you said like in 2008, that wasn't that kind of when you almost like hit rock bottom, or you said you were getting sick all the time or something, or what was happening then?
That was the start of rock bottom. So I got out in 2007, got a job in corporate America, moved across the country because I just thought I needed to change the scenery. So I was in Pennsylvania. Then I moved over to Dallas in 2008. And at this time, I noticed there was a big shift in my health. So something was going very, very wrong, very, very quickly. And so what that was I just started getting sick all the time. Like I would be traveling on the road and I would like have to be hospitalized because I was throwing up, and it was just this violent illness. And so I would be catching all these violent illnesses. I would have dizzy spells. I just started getting drastically more unhealthy at the age of 29 years old. So it was a problem. I was still a workaholic. I was still just working. That's all it is, pretty much worked, and then tried to deal with this stuff when I could.
How often did you get sick? How often did that pop up?
It was like once a month. I was like going to the emergency room for something. And it wasn't because I was a hypochondriac. There was stuff wrong with me, but I would be vomiting. And looking back, we know that that's my my microbiome was trashed. My immune system was, not handling its business. And so here I was traveling in all these new places, and I was just catching everything. I have no idea what the dizziness was about. Probably all medication and the sleep deprivation because I couldn't sleep at night still. And so I was just, outwardly, I looked, perfect. I really did. Like I was dressed really well. I could do my job. I could speak, but it was all just tremendously effective camouflage because inside I was just a complete disaster. So I started to try to solve the problem like I'd always done, going to the doctor. Look, doctor, I have problems. I can't sleep at night now. Okay, great. Here's some Lunesta. Okay. So that just makes everything worse, and it worsens the depression. So then the depression got worse. And so then I went, the doctor's like, I can't handle this. Go see a psychiatrist. So I go to the psychiatrist. He gives me even more medication. Then I'm on benzenes. I'm on.
Now, did the doctor literally say I can't handle you, or did he just put it another way? And that's
no, he didn't say it that way, but he just said, like, I have to refer you to a psychiatrist. You need more help than what I can offer. No, he was trying. He was definitely trying. And I just remember like being on all those medications, like, and having to travel and just, like triple checking to make sure I had all the meds because I could not function without these meds. Wow. And so so then the doctor, the psychiatrist, I'd go see him. We'd talk about things. He'd give me more medications. I ended up on a drug called Seroquel. It's off the market. But that's what led to my ultimate rock bottom point. Because it's an antipsychotic, but pretty much I was on it for around 2 months. And I noticed that I just kept like started getting panic attacks, started feeling even more depressed. It was even more difficult to do my job. And then I was at a business meeting and somebody asked me about my personal life and I just started crying. I couldn't even keep it together anymore. And at that point, I knew that there was just something just really, really wrong with me. And so then I got to the point where I was just crying constantly. And so within a week, I said, you know what, I have got to, oh, and by the way, I was losing massive amounts of weight. So I was around 100. What's that?
I remember you saying that you lost a ton of weight.
Well, that's really what sounded the alarm bell. So I started the whole thing. I was, 125 pounds, 5'4". I got down to 105 pounds and I was still losing weight. And so that's really what scared me because I thought, you know what, I'm getting so thin. I don't even know what's causing this and I don't know what to do about it. But I do know that you can't get that thin. I can't get much thinner and keep on living. So I knew I had to do something.
Yeah. Now, throughout that entire time period where you were getting prescribed those medications like anxiety, sleep, did you have a feeling like there was something wrong that wasn't being addressed, or did you have some confidence in what was being recommended to you? Like, did your disillusionment start before that rock bottom piece?
I think it really just started. I I think I was dealing with the psychiatrist, and I said, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, why do I keep getting worse? These medications aren't working. Nothing is working. And he said, oh, I think you just need to change its scenery. So he just totally gaslit me, right? He's just like, there's nothing wrong with you, because I didn't really have that much to be unhappy about.
Yeah.
And other than my physical situation. And so he said, you just need to move back home. You're just homesick. And I'm like, I've been away from home for 10 plus years. I'm not homesick.
I've heard that story so many times, and it's so unfortunate. And again, all these practitioners, I'm sure, have very good hearts and are trying to do best they can. But, people are like affected like in a very negative way from nutritional deficiencies, toxicities, and it definitely affects your mood. It affects your emotions, and it's real. And yet a lot of times it's like, that's the response that we get is like, well, there's really nothing wrong. Just keep trying these medications. But you had a realization that no, I really believe something is wrong.
Yeah. And pretty much up until that last month, I had faith in the system. I thought this stuff was going to fix me. I thought, okay, well, I'll just get to go back to doing what I was doing and having my job and just performing like the way I was performing. And, but once I started losing that weight, I was just like, holy cow, I have got to do something. And so I just called him up. I said, look, I have got to move back to my parents' house. I didn't even know I had like unemployment insurance or anything. I just said, whatever it is, I'm going to go figure this out, because if I don't, there's not going to be, I'm not going to be here. So it was at that moment.
What did you think it was at that point? Did you have any kind of intuition that it was slightly nutrition related, or what did you think it was? Or you had no idea?
I didn't have any idea, but I did know that I wanted to go the natural route because pretty much right after I moved home, and my dad came into my room, and this was really the epiphany as far as the medications. He came into my room. I was just bawling, and it was like the middle of the day. I was bawling. He's like, "Why are you so sad?" And I'm like, but he said it, he said it in a very caring way. And I said, "I don't know. I don't feel like I have anything to be sad about." And he said, "Then why are you crying?" And I was like, I don't know. And he walks out of the room, and I look at that medication, that Seroquel, and I knew it was that, because that was the thing that was recently introduced. So I stopped taking it. 3 days later, the tears were gone. And so at that moment, I knew that there was a physical cause to what was going on, and I was going to find out the answer. And so I also knew that I wasn't going to trust these people anymore. So I knew that I wasn't going to be going the medication route. I was in fact going to be getting off the medication. So I got a new psychiatrist in California. That's where I'm from. That's where my parents live. She was supportive. I told her I want to get off these meds. I want to, and my goal is to be off medication. And so and so she switched me over to amitriptyline. It's an older medication with a very long study history. And so I went on a low dose of that. And then I still had my clonazepam, the benzene that I was using as kind of a crutch for when, it's just stuff got out of control. And I started seeing natural healers. I got a new therapist. She was really into the natural world. And so I was fortunate to encounter some guides. However, I did spend about $15,000 just trying different things, trying different supplements, pain, energy healers, just setting money on fire, because none of it worked, because there was a physical problem with me, and it was nutrition related. And until that nutrition problem was addressed, all the energy and the healing in the world is not going to fix that if you keep putting in the junk, if you keep putting in the irritant. You can heal me for a second. Sure, I'll feel great for like 2 hours, and then it's going to go right back.
I love that point, because we are big believers in all modalities. A lot of things can be beneficial, but there's some things that are just not going to overcome or outdo or undo a toxic diet.
Yeah.
And not having nutritional sufficiency.
Absolutely. So
you spent a lot. What was the course of time there where you spent all that money seeing all these different practitioners? Was that like a year? Or?
It was about a year. Yeah, about a year spending just lighting money on fire. It was, and then by the way, I'd be going to doctors, the normal traditional Western doctors, because, by the way, my stomach was really upset. Every time I ate, it hurt to eat, which is why I started losing all the weight. So that was one reason why I was losing, but I didn't know why it hurt so bad to eat. So I get, painful gas. I was, just horrible cramps in my stomach. So I was seeing the GI doctors. That was really to no avail. Basically, their answer to me after, doing all these tests, colonoscopy, endoscopy, so many doctor visits, their answer was, well, you don't have cancer, so we don't know what to do.
I mean, the first thing I would have said was probably maybe stop eating the bread and, the cereal and the processed foods. But it just blows my mind that that's not the first thing that a gastrointestinal doctor would go to.
They never said that. They never, ever even brought it up.
Insanity. That's just crazy. So then you stumbled across something. You read a book or something on gluten?
Yeah. Okay. So I started seeing an acupuncturist. Now, acupuncture helps. Acupuncture raised me up about 30% from the way I was feeling, because the way I was feeling, I mentioned my GI problems. Okay. So after I got off my medication, I just had untreated depression and I didn't know why. I had panic attacks. I had an 8 out of 10 daily migraine. So my head just hurt so bad every single day. I was in chronic pain and I had these GI troubles. So the acupuncture helped to lift me up, maybe brought my migraine down to a 6 out of 10. Mm-hmm. So that was some very significant progress. You can function with a 6 out of 10 migraine. Mm-hmm. 8 out of 10 is extremely difficult. So and that's part of the money that I spend, is I spend, it's very expensive to get acupuncture. But, she kept nudging me towards doing cleanses and different things to try to figure out what was irritating my system. And I just wasn't ready for the information. And so she finally had me do a cleanse. And about the same time, I read a book, and the book was called The Gluten Connection by Dr. Sherry Lieberman. And so she just talked about all the chronic conditions that can be caused by gluten sensitivity. And pretty much I had a ton of conditions, and they were all listed in this book as something, related to gluten sensitivity. So, it was timed right around this cleanse I was supposed to do with her. And the past cleanses I cheated on. So I didn't do them right. I didn't give up my soy lattes. I was just using that just to get by. So I just decided to buckle down and just go for it. And I didn't really believe it would work, but after 3 days, my migraine got much better. And it was at that moment that I knew, holy cow, like, it just opened up a whole new world to me, that it could make that much of a difference. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So, and then after that, it's a journey. So so I got to be feeling better. I didn't have the stomach issues like I did, the stomach pain, as long as I avoided gluten. I would like cheat every 6 months, and then I would pay for it. I'd be like, it turns out for me, when I consume gluten, I just have a complete personality shift. Like, I turn into a different person. I'm just, I feel horrible, and just my vibration changes. Everything about me changes. And then I have stomach pain. And so I cannot do that, but I would have to relearn that lesson. And
I think all of us do. I think all of us go through that. There's a transitional period where you bounce in and out of it, and you notice yourself change. And again, we're back to like mood and emotions. It's just, it's crazy how much the things that we promote for health have an impact, and the lack of those things have an impact on your mood and emotions, and how different of a person you are when you're doing things that are right. But I think we all go through that transitional period where we bounce in and out of it. We get the feedback, and then hopefully, theoretically, that makes us just a little bit more diligent with it, because we get addicted to how good we feel,
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I cannot abide by feeling terrible. I just don't do it. To me, it took a few years, but the mind shift had to switch. Gluten is not food. Gluten is poison. For me, it's poison. So I don't eat poison, so I'm not going to do it, and then now it's just so much easier. There's just so many alternatives. But what I was thinking about is that, if only I had a resource like what you have available, like if only I had a coach or somebody who wasn't just tied to their own discipline, like the energy healer tied to this, and the acupuncture is tied to their, somebody who could really see the big picture and just tell me exactly what to do. Like, how much would I have saved? How much trouble would I have saved?
I know.
Just so many things.
You think about your time frame, it was very similar to mine. I hit my worst around, I mean, it was like 2007, 2008 or something like that. You know, my heaviest weight, high blood pressure, I had just all these really, really bad signs of metabolic and cardiovascular health. And then when I, around the same time period, started, you know, went through the Nutritional Therapy Association's courses and learned from Weston A. Price and stuff, I couldn't find any practitioners. There were very, very few. I mean, there were NTPs out of the NTA, and now it's like that resource is out there for people if they want it and need it. There are health coaches that are ancestral based, primal based, paleo based, autoimmune. I mean, you name it. But we just didn't have access to that much stuff back then. It was like we had to figure it out on our own, which makes us really good teachers for other people. I think it's one of the reasons that you're doing so well with your community and all the people that follow you, you know, because you've learned from your own experience. And what we can do is give people the shortcut. You know, we can say, you don't have to go through 5-10 years of suffering. Here's what we need to experiment with,
Exactly. Because, just because I figured out that I was gluten sensitive doesn't mean that my suffering ended. It just means that I had less of a headache. It means that, I still didn't feel great. So, I guess, there was a difference though. It wasn't like I was trapped in the hell of my body like I was, in 2009, but still I didn't feel great. So it took a lot more. And so another shift, was when I met an individual. He's my chiropractor. He's a active release chiropractor, so very specific one. But he's also the masters. Let's see, the world champion masters level natural bodybuilder. But he's also a biohacker, and so he introduced me into the world of biohacking, where you can run labs on yourself, and you can do things like red light and supplements and a lot of things that can help to bring you up to the next level. And so one of the first things he did for me is he got me a food sensitivity test. And that was a game changer as well, because it turns out that I still had a leaky gut, even though, from the gluten sensitivity, from that time, the time when my gut was so trashed, I hadn't done anything to rehab my microbiome. And I had developed tons of food sensitivities. And so sensitivities to objects like, or to foods like vanilla, onions, these are ubiquitous foods. They're in almost everything. And so it's really, really hard to eliminate them from your diet unless you actually know about it. Then you can start reading labels and get them out of there. But basically, if you have a severe sensitivity to these foods, then you can start, it causes rampant inflammation and immune response. And so I was just basically inflamed, and that's why my pain was persisting. That's why my headache was persisting. That's why my mood issues were still not great. And I wasn't experiencing the kind of health that I wanted to. So
it sounds like if I hear you right, like the initial removing the wheat and the gluten was a big game changer for you. You saw significant results, but you also couldn't stop there because you wanted to continue to optimize. And so you sought out some additional help, and some testing actually really, really made a big difference for you.
Sorry, you froze for a second. You're back.
Okay. Yeah. So it sounds to me, if I hear you right, like it's like, you made a big step with the gluten piece, but then it wasn't enough. Like you wanted to continue to optimize, and that's where some self-testing came to be beneficial.
Absolutely. So we did the testing, that was a step. And by this point I was like sold. I was like, great.
Yeah. Now it's just a matter of like, what do I need to do, and experimenting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so then I discovered, and by this time I was already having kids, like, I was well into my motherhood journey. So I started experimenting with, he introduced me to keto. He introduced me to what was it? Fasting and keto. So I started doing that. But here's the thing. Here's another reason why you need a guide, because I actually, I was doing really well. I was doing fasting. I was doing keto. I'd had my second baby.
You said you went into a coma. Is that what you're going to?
Oh my gosh. I got myself into I would have been the healthiest person, that died, like I would have been that girl. Like, cause by this time I was doing kombucha. So I was really doing a lot of probiotics, microbiome pampering. So I'd really mastered that, rehabbing my microbiome, fasting, doing keto. But here's the kicker. So if you don't and this is hard information to find in a lot of the books that I was reading back then. Like it's really buried or they don't even mention it. But you know, if you are going keto, you're doing fasting, you're breastfeeding children, you need to raise your sodium intake drastically. The reason why is because your insulin levels are now much lower. Insulin's your storage hormone. If you don't, you know, it helps you store salt as well as sugar. So if you don't raise your salt intake, then you might develop a significant problem. And I see it all the time in my community and also with the individuals that I coach.
And when you go low carb or keto, you're also depleting the body of a lot of minerals as you're losing some glycogen. And yeah, we always recommend people from the very beginning start to mineralize their water using some trace minerals and some extra salt or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. So the salt problem can be very significant. And there's, you know, there's different risk factors. Turns out I have all of them. Past antidepressant use, breastfeeding children. Breastfeeding, extended nursing is a huge risk factor for that. You know, I live in a hot, arid climate. I know you guys do too. And then, you know, doing practices that, you know, lower those insulin levels, that's what got me into trouble. But basically I was on vacation in Arizona. I was working out a little bit more than usual, twice a day. That's another risk factor. Because I was trying to take off my baby weight. My baby was 6 months old. I was like, let's get this party started. Mm-hmm. You know, I was drinking my kombucha, which has caffeine in it, which also will deplete your electrolytes. And I ended up getting a headache. So what did I do in the past when I had a headache, when I was high carb? This did not register. What did I do in the past? I would drink water. I assumed it was dehydration. So I started drinking water. And what happened over the course of a little bit more than 24 hours is I got hyponatremia. So this is a condition that you can get. It's called overhydration, where your body cannot release the water from your cells. Your brain is essentially swelling with water, and your cells, you know, the water's trapped within your cells. It cannot, your body can't release it. So I ended up just feeling like I was floating. I had this horrible headache. I just knew something was wrong. So we went to the aid station. I begged them for an IV because that's what we always did in the Army, right? And then I ended up, they wouldn't give it to me. They sent me to the hospital, and thank goodness they did, because the IV would have killed me. I had a seizure right there at the check-in desk. You know, I was that bad. And then I was in a coma for 3 days. And I remember waking up and they're sitting there. First, I thought they were joking. They had breast pumps on me. Like it was I don't know. It was terrifying. But I thought they were joking at first, because they're like, you were in a coma. I'm like, what are you talking about? Then I look around, the reality of my situation sinks in. I'm like, what was I in a coma from? And by the way, you get sudden caustic anger from low sodium. So it affects your mood. So I remember they said, you know, it was specifically NaCl that you were deficient in. And I remember just feeling horrified and just pissed that I hadn't been, or that I almost lost my opportunity to raise my children. That was the first thought I ever had. And so it was, you know, that was a lesson to me as well, you know, about the importance of a, you know, a guide, somebody that actually knows what they're doing, because, you know, that's a serious situation and it absolutely could have killed me. I was so close. So.
Wow. Well, I'm happy you're here too. So now that we're here in 2021, what does your nutrition look like? Like, how do you eat? Do you have a methodology that you're following, or are you constantly experimenting?
I'm always experimenting. You got to experiment. So
or what works for you right now?
So the people I follow, Dave Asprey, and I don't follow everything they say, but, you know, I love to see what Dave Asprey says about things. I love what Ben Greenfield says, Dr. Perlmutter, he's always the gut guru. So those are really the, you know, Maria Emmerich, she's a keto lady. Mm-hmm. Those ones, you know, I like to reference them. And then I'm always trying to learn with Dr. Panda Sachin about circadian health. So it's really not just about nutrition for me. It's about the whole picture. So the day starts, you know, and I like to look at my life under the lens of mitochondrial function. So everything is a question as how do I maximize mitochondrial function? So if you don't know, mitochondrial function is where the energy is made within your cells. And so I look at, and that's the way I look at things. So, things that minimize systemic inflammation, that increases mitochondrial function. Things that, increase systemic inflammation, that's going to lower it. Red light from the sun, getting your afternoon sun exposures, all those will increase mitochondrial function. So I start on my day. I do supplements, that help to increase my mitochondrial function. I start out with a red light and infrared session on my face, and then I do my stomach. So I have a light that I do, and then when I'm working in my office, I'll turn that on. What else will I do? So I'll go out. It's very important that you see the sun first thing in the morning, to really lock in that circadian rhythm. So light is a huge aspect of that. I don't have fluorescent lights in my home, or any kind of blue light. We try to keep the lights off, let the natural light in. And then I do intermittent fasting. So I'm learning that we're supposed to switch it up, but I'm a pretty regular, start off at 6 a.m. I have like a probiotic shake, and then probably around 9 a.m. I'll have a can of sardines. And, because you got to get those omega-3s from your wild caught fish. Mm-hmm. And then, a lot of it's grass-fed beef, butter. I'll definitely do some kind of not fat coffee. I don't do coffee. I just do fat and hot water, blend it up.
Water, that's it. Nothing else in it.
It's an MCT.
Like
yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's got a note. It's not a tea or anything. It's not tea or coffee.
No, I just like it. Like
fat and water. I gotta try that.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
I actually did 2 weeks of almost no coffee, just because I'm always experimenting too. But I love you saying all this stuff because this is a lot of what we teach too. We have our different foundations for health, and we focus on all of it. The outdoors, sun exposure, stress management, meditation, sleep. And it's just good to hear someone else has found that it's not, like you said, it's not just the nutrition. One thing that I did want to just kind of highlight is something really important that you said that I don't think most people, if most people can get to this point and have this realization. So there was a point at which you knew, okay, so I'm seeing these results. So this is where my work is. Like there's hope, because now I know where I need to focus my effort, even though I'm not sure exactly everything that I need to do specifically. But when you said that, it's like, yeah, there's a point at which when you start to tinker around in this, whatever you want to call it, ancestral health, holistic, health realm, something starts to change and you're like, oh, this is the solution. It's figuring this part of it out. It is my nutrition. It is my lifestyle factors. And I think that's the spot that we want most people to get to. But I think they also need to acknowledge that this is working. This is where my work is, because the alternative is the other realm, and the other realm is not going to work out very well for us,
No,
but I love that realization.
No, I want to age well. I want to be, I want to be there for my kids. I want to be able to play with my kids. I want to not feel like hell every single day. And it is work, and it is a process. Like nobody's perfect. You can't, even, I'm sure you even have your moments where, you don't do everything right,
Yeah. Well, it's relative too. It's like, my not being perfect 5 years ago was way different from my not being perfect now. I mean, me going off now, most people would say, what's wrong with that? And I'm like, well, to me, I'm just trying to optimize things, but I think it's all relative to where you are in your journey.
It absolutely is. And when I'm really on point, I'm doing meditation, I do meditation before bed. I prefer to use binaural beats meditation. So I was going to say, as far as my day goes, after the sardines, I'm really planning my day, and it took me a really long time to get to this point. So it took me until last year where I just buckled down and I said, you know what, those midday sun exposures where you're getting your vitamin D, you're getting your endorphin release, you're getting your nitric oxide release, those midday sun exposures are so important that I'm going to make it a priority every single day. And I'm going to get my butt out there for an hour a day or however long it takes every single day. And I'm going to get it done. And so now I've combined my workout. I've moved my whole gym outside. It's just like free weights. I do use a biohacker tool called Be Strong Bands, so that I can use lighter weights to work out. They help to activate the HGH, hormone release that helps to define your muscles a little bit better. So that's a biohacker tool. And so I'll use those. And I have all my setup outside, and I'll do that under the sun in the middle of the day, just to make sure that I'm checking all those blocks and I'm getting my sun exposure. Because if you don't plan for it, it's not going to happen. Like I can make a 1,000 excuses to not go outside. I've got this to do. I've got so many responsibilities. And I actually, when we started homeschooling during the lockdown, I moved the whole school outside, and that was kind of a dream of mine. Like we would do classes in the morning outside, and then we were for sure getting our vitamin D. We did that all the way up through December. Yeah. And the boys are out there with shirts off, any chance they get. I have a daughter too. She takes her shirt off too. Everybody's got their shirt. Not me, but
I love it. It sounds like the perfect community.
Yeah,
not the shirts off thing, but the people being outdoors and actually exercising outside.
We've got our skin out, and it's not. And the thing is, like, most people I even talk to today, they think, oh, you're going out in the sun, you're going to get wrinkles, you're going to, you're going to get skin cancer. Sunscreen is, if you're not getting adequate sun exposure, nobody's saying go get burned. Yeah. But if you're not adequate sun exposure, you're constantly lathered in sunscreen, you're doing your indoor lifestyle, that is more of a risk factor for cancer.
Oh yeah.
Yay. No, I was just saying how important that midday sun is. And then I always laugh. I'm like, do I look wrinkly?
I don't think so. I think you look great.
Thank you. No, but it's a joke because, basically you end up looking, you don't overdo sun, you time it. I use an app, I time the sun exposures to make sure I'm getting adequate vitamin D, and I can actually feel it. I can feel that endorphin release. I can feel the nitric oxide relief. I know when I'm done.
Yeah.
And
sure. We're in the sun all the time, but I think some of the things I like about what you said is you have to eventually figure out, like, what are those things that I need to get in my day to check off the box that are absolutely crucial to my health. And starting out, I think when people are just beginning, you're starting where you are and you're trying to make these simple, small changes. But at some point, with a lot of my clients, I like to map out an ideal day. What are the things we know we have to fit in here? We know we got to fit in our bedtime. We know we need a wind down time. We know that we need our meals. We know that we need some sun exposure, some meditation. So I like that you said, I know that I need to do these things. And if I don't plan for it, it's not going to happen. I remember there was a time I used to always set an alarm for 15 minutes and I'd stand out in the sun and just make sure that I'm standing out there doing some work, maybe on my phone or something, walking around. Now it's not a problem now because here in Vegas, like, I'm out just throwing the Frisbee all the time with my dog. But I do like that you said that it helps to acknowledge what are these things that I need to fit into my life to make me look, feel, and perform my best, and how can I integrate that into my crazy, chaotic life?
And the answer is planning, and prioritizing. So, I know I have to get some HIIT training in. I know I need to get some weights in. I like to use biohacks with that. So that's what the Be Strong bands are all about. And it's really, and then the meditation, and for me, meditation, I can feel a change when I use binaural beats meditation. That's my preferred way to do it. Like, that is a much stronger change in my brain. And so sometimes I'll do that when I'm, I don't always just sit there and meditate. I'll plug in the binaural beats and I'll just kind of go out. I don't operate a vehicle or anything, but, I'll go out and just keep cooking for my family or doing whatever it is that I have to do.
Yeah.
But, I'm definitely affecting my brainwaves. So, and then bedtime, sleep is another thing that I buckled down on last year.
Sleep is the biggest missing link. I mean, it's the most underappreciated thing that we have access to. It's the next level, I think. Yeah.
As a nursing mom, it's hard to sleep. Like, it just has to do with your hormones. I've been nursing different kids for 9 years. And so sleep is super tough, but I just prioritize it. I do take supplements to get me all the way to sleep. I make sure that I'm doing the right things with my circadian rhythm, honoring that. But I do make it an absolute priority. And I just kind of started giving up and just going to bed with the kids. And then when I wake up, then I'm up, but, so I wake up earlier than they do, but
yeah. And I think it's a beautiful thing too, to know that, you're raising some badass little kids the right way, learning the info that we did not have. Imagine how awesome they're going to be. Imagine how awesome we would have been if we'd have found this stuff when we were kids. You
Oh
know, it
my
wasn't
gosh.
until we got into, I mean, for me, it was my mid 30s, you know, but later in life. And it's just like, my life is so great because of my health. And I just can't imagine how much better it would be if I would have started so much earlier. So I think it's just an amazing, first of all, your entire story is just great. I think there's a lot of great things we can learn from that. And it's good to know that now you're able to instill that in some other young people that are also going to have their own ripple effects in this world as they get older, you know. It's,
They they already do. They it's so funny. My youngest or my oldest started like in preschool talking about gluten. We don't eat gluten.
Yeah, no, I love it. We got kids in our community, you know, part of families, and they're just like, they read labels, and like, it's just because they're intelligent, they experience it, they know how it feels to feel good and not feel good. So,
Yeah.
but hey, that was a great story. Let's just go through. I just want to make sure that we highlight some of our good learning points. I think one of the first ones that we talked about was that you know, this overachieving to compensate for you know, something else. It's like maybe we can resolve that in a different way, right? Like, what if there's something that we could learn from that? What would be a takeaway?
Sorry, wait a second. Can you explain the question again?
Oh, so the first thing that I remember us talking about was just this mentality of overachieving to compensate for insecurity or something like that. Is there anything that we can learn from that little piece there? Because isn't that what you
I'm
felt like?
yeah, I mean, all I know is what I know now is that I'm enough. You know, I come at the day and I'm open and I come to serve and see how I can serve my fellow human beings, try to act in a kind way with integrity, try to share what I learn in a non-obtuse way, just by sharing my story, hoping to make a positive impact on the world. And that's enough. I don't have to be anything else except for the best version of myself. And yeah, so
And
to that striving child, go ahead.
the reality is the healthier version of yourself is actually better for the world than the I hate to use the term overachiever because I think we're all driven to some degree, but I'm just thinking back on your story. I like what you're saying there about, like, if you focus on health first, then that version of yourself is going to be better for this world than you trying to compensate in some other way. You
Well,
know, it's
life is so much easier when you're healthy. Like it just plain out is. You can function better. You can think better. You know, if I'm going to sit down and do some content or do some work, I can use the tools that I have. I have a binaural beats meditation that helps to wake up my brain and get those brainwaves flowing. I mean, there's so many scientifically backed hacks, and I love the ancestral model. And then, but I also love using some of these hacks as well. I do my meditation on a non-EMF, like old school device. Um, but I know that's something that not a lot of people talk about. But I guess it's just to that child, what I'd want to say to that child is that what, you're enough. Just let's fix your diet and you can go and let your light shine, and it doesn't have to be this hard. So
yeah. And also, a lot of the symptoms that people are experiencing, the majority of it, if not all of it, is probably related to lifestyle. You know, that
yeah.
includes your nutrition and your sleep and just all the things that we discover as we get into this holistic ancestral health realm. Also, I like that we talked about how we all have this transitional journey where, we learn these initial concepts and we put them into practice. We see some results, but it's not the entire story. But that's hopefully when we have the realization that, hey, this is where my work is. This is what's making a difference. This is making me feel better. So thank goodness I found the realm that I'm supposed to be in. And now it's just a question of continuing to learn and experiment and be as diligent as I can while being easy on myself. I thought that was a really, really good point that we brought up. There was something else that you said as we were going through that. Oh, about the rigidity of your days. So I've gotten like that in the past couple of years, especially with my coaching. There was a time that it was like I was so strict with whatever it is that I was in at the time. Like if I was doing one meal a day, it was one meal a day. And that was it. Like it was just I was not going to veer from that. And
Yeah.
if I hear you right, like I'm more like you now, where I'm a lot more flexible with when I eat. I mean, I typically only eat one time a day sometimes, but I'm very easy about it. I don't have this rigid mindset. And I'm also encouraging my clients to like experiment and be easy and flexible and let your life situation kind of dictate what you do and how you fit these different lifestyle factors in. It's just that we need to acknowledge what the most important things are that we need to do, the basic guidelines and framework. So I thought that was a really, really powerful little point too. And
Well,
then how
especially with
important?
fasting. Yeah, especially with fasting, like your body thrives on, our ancestors didn't have predictable meals.
Yeah.
And so, we do need to mix it up. So I've definitely been strict. I think being strict is helpful when you're a beginner, but
Yeah, for sure.
now we're 6 years into this, right? I don't know how long you've been fasting, but that's how long I've been doing it. And so, we know we have control of our bodies. We can mix it up a little bit. So
yeah. I actually just had a little talk with a client of mine and did a video on it. And it was exactly this concept about being, you have your things, you have your days, your ideal days, and this is what it looks like most of the time, but you're also very flexible and adaptive. And the most amazing version of yourself is not going to get derailed because you had breakfast one day when you're not supposed to, or you had some fruit in the morning when you're not supposed to, or something like that, And then how important has it been to have a community of support? Because I know that your Facebook group has been great for you. How beneficial is that?
Oh, it's so huge. Just man, at the beginning, it was like nobody believed me. Like people were they were anti-supportive. They were critical. They were judgmental. They were not supportive. And I would tell my story and they'd be like, yeah, whatever. They would kind of gaslight me. Like they would act like, oh, how could it be gluten? Really?
Mm-hmm.
And it felt terrible. And it made me second guess my journey. And so now I try to provide a community for others and accept them wherever they are on the journey, whatever they're into, whatever step they're taking. It's just putting one foot in front of the other. Most people aren't doing all the things, but they're trying, they're dipping their foot in, they're trying to get there. But it's super important to have like-minded people. One of the things we do in my community is just share your wins, big and small, so whatever a win looks like for you. 1 week, a win for me was not hurting my knee in Taekwondo because I'm training for my black belt. But I didn't hurt my knee like super bad. I only hurt it a little bit. Got a little reminder about, maybe not doing everything the kids. And I was, and it's recovering, but it could have been way worse. Right. So that was my win. So, it's a community where people accept these ideas. They believe the ideas. They believe your story. They support your story. They empathize with that, and you don't have shame anymore. So, yeah. I think losing the shame is something was probably one of the last steps for me. And it's, that right there, I'm out and I'm proud of my lifestyle.
Yeah. And the support of others makes a big difference there, right? Feeling like you can be vulnerable and honest and open about what's going on and how well you're doing or, where you need some help.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The community piece, I've always envisioned a community for what we're doing. We've been trying to do this since like maybe 2010, and it's just been an amazing journey. I initially thought that it was going to be like a local community, and now I've got an online platform similar to like a Facebook group, and I've found that to be just as beneficial, because people connect from all over the world, but the community support aspect's really beneficial.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah. But that's been awesome. So thank you so much for sharing your story. There's just a lot of great learning points in there, and we'll do some notes to kind of summarize the key points, and we'll put that into a post associated with this. And is there anything else that you'd like to finish with? What's your future plans?
My future plans. Okay, number one, I'm raising future superheroes. So, not. Definitely in the ancestral living, that's the number one priority. Number two, I definitely want to just be an example, be a role model for others on this journey, tell whoever's listening, don't give up, don't feel ashamed. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. And I wouldn't trade any moment of my journey for anything. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And the knowledge came. Yeah, it was hard won, but because I learned it and because I lived it, I can influence others. So if you're struggling, just don't lose hope no matter what. The answers are out there. You And if you don't get an easy win, like, you're feeling a little bit better with gluten, don't stop. You got to double down.
Mhm.
You got to, the roadmap is here. You're on the right path.
Yeah,
So
I love it. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm so happy we reconnected. This was like
yeah, me too.
an unexpected surprise when I saw your message, and I was just like, oh, like I immediately like just went back to a bunch of great memories, and I was just like, oh, so it's been so great just chatting with you. And I'll invite you over to our community. Check it out. You can poke your head in there and see what you think about it. Maybe you can be a part of it. But we'll definitely share, if whatever you're open to, we'll share some contact info and resources into the Facebook group maybe, and then we'll stay in touch. Maybe we'll do a follow up call at some point in the future.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, that was great. We'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Bye.